So today's video is how to know when a nuclear war starts. All these big channels are telling you all this stuff about how to figure out whether nuclear war is starting and if it's close. And I did a video and I told you the signs that you could actually see of a nuclear war is impending. Now, I'm going to tell you, you're not going to know a nuclear war has started until the first device goes off at a minimum. And that's if you have a EMP attack where your electrical goes out. Then you would know something's coming. Otherwise, you have to wait for the news, the sound, the flash, or whatever it is to get to you. So I saw an interesting thing years ago, and in one of the science classes I taught, they asked me how long it would take a nuclear blast, the sound waves, to reach you. So I figured that was kind of an interesting thing. It was called distant thunder, and that's the sounds of a nuclear war. And they would actually reach people in unaffected areas after the war was well underway. So here on our notes, the closest thing we know of to the sound a nuclear war would make is the Krakatoa volcanic eruption. And when we look at that, it was the equivalent to 200 megatons. It traveled 3,106 miles where people could actually hear the sound in the frequencies that the ear can recognize. Now, those sound waves traveled around the Earth 4 times. But after the first 3,106 miles, they were below the frequency threshold you could hear. So acoustical equipment could have picked it up, but not the human ear. Now what we see here is the speed of sound is 767 miles per hour. When we look at the distance from Washington, D.C. to Kiev or Kyiv, depending on how you want to pronounce it, that's 4,864 miles. The distance from D.C. to London is 3,674 miles. So if a nuclear blast went off in Kyiv, and if it was big enough that the sound waves reached to D.C., it would take 6.34 hours for the sound waves to get there. Now, when we're looking at D.C., if we had a nuclear blast go off in London, it would be 3,674 miles away. That would take 4.79 hours to get to D.C. Now, what's more interesting is if you were sitting in Berlin, Germany, and a nuclear bomb went off in Kyiv, it would take 1.57 hours for you to hear the noise. It's 1,204 miles. You would actually hear that noise. It would be within the threshold of the ear. The same thing with London. If you had Kyiv and you had a nuclear bomb go off, it's 1,498 miles. It would take almost 2 hours to get to London before they'd hear it. Now, I did some interesting figures here in the U.S. If a nuclear detonation went off in Washington, D.C., it would be 258 miles to Durham, North Carolina. That would take 20 minutes for the sound waves to get there. If we had a nuclear detonation in New York City, it would take 38 minutes for the sound waves to get to Durham, North Carolina. So that's kind of an interesting aside I thought you might enjoy. Please comment. We'll see you on the next video.